Good day, good day. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Jay, and this is Homeschool Your Kids podcast. Today we have with us Amy. Amy, introduce yourself.
I am an autistic adult who used to be a school psychologist, and now I consult worldwide, mostly with homeschoolers. I still get the occasional public, private school professionals, but mostly homeschoolers. Um, my goal is mostly to create resources to help families who've got some kind of need that falls outside the average, whether that's a disability, neurodiversity, it could be a genetic condition, cancer, trauma, anything that means that we need a little extra support.
Nice. Okay.
Mhm.
So, need I ask, how did we get here?
What do you mean?
Like, as far as what you're passionate about helping families with, why? Why is that
Yeah.
a passion?
Well, I grew up one of those kids and I had a really hard time in school. And it took its toll emotionally as well, because as children, our worlds are so small that when we look around and don't see anyone else like us, we kind of assume there's something wrong with us.
Mm,
And so I spent most of my childhood looking around going, why can't I do what everybody else is doing? Why can't I do these things as easily as everyone else is? And I worked really hard to be able to keep up with my peers. And we don't we don't appreciate the effort children put forth most of the time. We celebrate their accomplishments, but not the effort.
mm,
And I was in a private school. So being in a private school, um, yes, they wanted to make my experience as positive as possible, but we were still working within a system. And so when we had our own children and they also were diagnosed as autistic, I wanted to create an environment for them to live in and to work in and to learn in that would be tailor made for them and their needs, as opposed to trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
totally understand. Totally
Yeah.
understand. Do you homeschool now?
I do. I have a 16-year-old and almost 14-year-old
Okay. How long have you all been at it?
since the very beginning.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we've done
And
this for
how's
quite
that
a
look for you guys? How has
while.
that been looking?
So let's see. When I first started homeschooling, like many parents, I found Kathy Duffy's 101, 102, whatever version you're on, curriculum options or homeschool options. I can't remember the exact title, but I went through the first chapter or so that has the little quizzes. And so one of the things that popped up was Charlotte Mason. And I was like, what is this? And then I went to the description and they're like, we read books. And I'm like, I love books. So that was kind of what drew me in because I was like, you mean I could have spent my entire education just reading books and going outside and listening to music and doing art? Sign me
Right,
up.
right.
So once I started doing that, what I came to realize though is that Charlotte Mason's philosophy was written over 100 years ago. And she
Mm.
does talk about children who are atypical, but there's a lot of room left for how does that look? And so I had to kind of go through her philosophy as well as everything I had learned when I was in school, my own personal experiences, doing some trial and error with my kids, and trying to figure out okay, so this is what we know from the research. This is what she was speaking about in her philosophy, which, by the way, a lot of people don't know this. I can't find a single research study to refute anything that she wrote about over 100 years ago, which is pretty amazing. We have research coming out all the time, so you would think there would be something, but she kept it pretty basic to things like children are people. A lot of times when we talk about education, that's not where we start. We start
Mm,
thinking about them like little robots or computers to program the way we want to. Well,
yes,
they're
ma'am.
individuals. That's not going to work. And nobody
Right.
knows that better than somebody who's got a kid that falls outside the average. So after doing all of this homeschooling for a while with my kids and going through her philosophy and the research and like kind of letting all those ideas simmer together in my mind, um, I eventually realized kind of how do we look at that in terms of a neurodiverse perspective, which is often how I describe myself, but it also applies to anybody else who has a need that's outside the average. And a lot of it is taking a holistic approach that sees the child as a human being. And the rest of that is thinking developmentally about where we are. And it doesn't mean that we're not presuming competence, because we can still give kids a in Charlotte Mason world we call it a rich feast of ideas, but a rich feast of an education while also respecting where they are developmentally and not pushing them beyond things they're comfortable with, because we learn best when we're comfortable. If we're not comfortable, we're not learning well.
Yes, yes, yes. I do agree. So, do you use most of Charlotte Mason's principles when it came to homeschooling?
I use a lot of her, actually, I use all of her principles. Now, the rest of it, how it's applied, that's a whole different thing. And we
Nice.
definitely don't party like it's 1899. That's not what we're about.
What about
So
1999? What about
maybe
with Prince?
1999. Those were some good years. I'm just saying. um, but I do use her 20 principles, but I look at them through the lens of someone who's neurodivergent, who's had all of these experiences and worked in the field. And so when I interpret her 20 principles, I'm interpreting them through that lens. So, a lot of times it'll talk about things like, you should only read once because you want kids to learn to pay attention. Well, if we have auditory processing issues going on and they go, hold on a second, I missed that, I'm going to repeat it.
Yeah.
you know, Mix it with brains, think it
Yes.
through, apply it in a way that works for your family. So that's a lot what I do now. And with my own kids, I create a custom curriculum each year. And actually, I created a packet that's on my website. It's called a boost packet, planning, organizing, and documenting your homeschool the neurodivergent way.
Nice.
So there's 12 executive functioning skills. Out of the 12, I have about 3, which is a bit of a problem because I'm in my 40s, so I don't think I'm going to be getting any more. So, an executive
Oh,
functioning is
so okay, so
how
out of the 12 that you're supposed to have,
I have
because these
3.
are 12 you're supposed to have, and you
Yeah.
have 3. Okay.
Yeah. And
Tell me more. Tell me
so
more.
executive functioning is how we do anything in life. It's what allows us to like organize and plan and be timely and all of those things. So I have many tools that help me function in the world with only basically 3. The rest of mine were all in the toilet. So
Mm,
they are not very helpful at all. So I make good use of those 3 that I have. I have different ways of doing things than a lot of other people's homes because I know which are my strengths and I know all of my weaknesses, like most of us.
what are the 3? What are the 3
Let's
that you
see.
do have?
My top 3 are organization, and that's very specific. It has to be visualized organization. Like there's very specific types. Metacognition, which is seeing patterns in things. So
Okay.
that's actually how I created my packet. I'm really good at looking at patterns in kids and people and how we can do things. And so metacognition is kind of like the ultimate data cruncher um, executive functioning skill. You take all that information in, the pattern of it all, and then you figure out what it means.
Okay.
How can we use this efficiently? What can we do with this? And then my last one is flexibility, none of which are useful for bill pay. I'm just saying, there's problems. Thankfully, I married somebody who has more executive functioning skills than I do.
Oh, nice balance. We
Yeah.
always need that balance.
It's
Beautiful.
true. It's true. We need balance with ourselves, but also within our like families and communities and stuff. It helps.
Yes. Yes,
Um,
yes.
but yeah, so with having so few executive functioning skills, it makes homeschooling a challenge because a lot of those homeschool curriculums kind of depend on the mom being able to like organize and pull it all together. And usually it's not visual organization, it's like words and spreadsheets. And I'm just looking at it going, too many words, people. Um, so I ended up eventually figuring out what did work for me. And it worked so well. I spend maybe a week working on it each year, and that's it. To create an
Nice.
entire custom curriculum each year for both my kids, to organize it, document it to our state, like all of that is done within a week. And we're talking like maybe a few hours a day total for a week. That's it.
Mm.
It's not hard. And so when I realized, hey, wait a second, this isn't so bad. Like, this is pretty good. If I can do this, I bet a lot of other people can do this. And so I created a packet to make it easier. So,
Oh, nice. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So you do okay. Tell us about your business.
Okay. So this is the fun part. So my bread and butter is really, so, all right. We have the website divided into three areas. Okay. And the website's amybodkin.com. So there's Ally, which is ally with us through our podcast and merch.
Mm.
And the podcast is special needs kids are people too. And the whole point is to bring awareness to the fact that, yes, these kids are people too, and we aren't always respecting them as much as we should. So,
Mm.
and different issues that we have that there needs to be more awareness for. We are just wrapping up season 3. Season 4 is going to be focused on all things medical, which is a huge area of challenge for a lot of people, whether they are like childhood cancer survivors or they are autistic and very often get substandard medical care because people don't realize that their communication and sensory processing is different.
Mm.
And if someone doesn't present symptoms, then we assume they're fine. That doesn't necessarily, or we might present different symptoms than what they're thinking. So we're going to be diving into all those kinds of things. Boost is for B, it's ABC, easy as
Okay.
ABC. So Boost is where you get educational resources. I actually just published my book. It
Oh,
came
nice.
out, yeah, Friday. It's called Special Needs Kids Are People Too, Seeing the Possibilities Through a Neurodiverse Lens. In it, I talk about,
Congratulations.
thank you. And
Yes.
so we are #1 in new releases for both, let's see, it was parenting children with hyperactivity and also in teaching students with developmental and intellectual disabilities. I
Mm.
think that's what it was. Yeah. And I was super excited because so Temple Grandin was in one of the same categories we are, and our book was above theirs. So I was kind of excited.
Oh, wow.
Well, just because I've
Okay.
heard her speak for so many years over the years, you know, she's a bit of a legend in the area. So it was kind of neat. So
Nice. Yes.
yeah,
Big pat on the back.
thank
Yes.
you. But it's doing well. But this book, this is kind of the heart and soul of what I do. It talks, it's got a philosophical section at the front where it talks about some of my influences, Charlotte Mason, Abraham Maslow, Joseph Campbell, and how all of these influences and what they had to say played into creating this entirely different philosophy of how do we support children and do it in a positive way that shows true acceptance. Because if you
Mm.
look at a lot of the stuff out there with, like for instance, if you think about IEPs at school,
Mm.
most of them say, Johnny will blank number of times by blank. Now, the IEP is supposed to be the document that protects and safeguards our children in the schools. It's not supposed to cover the school's butt. And most
Mm.
of the time, it is used to cover the school, not to secure supports for that child. And so
Yeah.
we aren't doing that well as a society. We're not supporting kids well. And one of the things that we get to in the second part of the book, the practical section, is how can we take Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where he's talking about how physical needs are our baseline and safety needs are next, and then emotional, and how those needs play into learning. Because
Yes.
in his pyramid, education falls in the very top of the pyramid. But so often when we see an educational challenge, we jump to some kind of intervention or therapy or tutoring or something. And I'm like, wait a minute, are we sure this kid is feeling okay inside? Because almost every single time I work with a family, if they have a learning challenge, turns out the kid usually has some kind of physiological health issue that's been
Mm.
missed most of the time. There's some kind of inflammation in the kid's system that hasn't been addressed. And so that book kind of explains my philosophy now. From there, we have a lot of boost packets. We're supposed to be getting another 2 or 3 up on the website soon. I think right now there's just the one that I told you about earlier, planning, organizing, and documenting your homeschool. And my thought process with that is there are so many things out there for special needs parents where they go, here's this huge price tag, but we'll solve all your problems. And I've run into that way too many times. And I feel like, anytime you attach special needs to anything, it jacks the price up super high.
Just like
And
organic.
yeah, yeah. And meanwhile, we've got families that are really struggling because they want to support their kids well, but they don't always know how or where's the issue that I need to support. And so to make that a bit more accessible, I wrote the main book, which is this one. And then each of the packets is on an individual subject. So then you pick the packets you need instead of paying for some big expensive course that has everything in it that you could possibly need. Um, so that's one option for education. Now, where things really shine is category C, which is Connect. And that is where I do all my one-on-one consults, which are like a deep dive. So we do psychological achievement tests, psychological developmental tests. I send a huge long child development questionnaire asking about health and development and how long you've been homeschooling and what is your like social history, like all these things. But I'm collecting all this data because I told you I'm really good at metacognition, which is making those patterns and connections. And so I get all this data and I see all the patterns and connections. And then I can tell the parents, okay, this is where we're at. And these are the things that are showing up as being most important right now. And I take a very different approach to it than a lot of psychologists because I'm viewing it through the lens of my philosophy, like I mentioned in my book.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times when I meet with a family, sometimes the first thing that will come up is, okay, so your kid has inflammation in multiple systems of the body. Something's going on, and we need to get to the bottom of it. Let's see if we can't figure out what that is, whether that's, referring you to your doctor, an immunologist, or maybe taking a look at our diet because that's something that we can have more control over as far as like, you know, it's like cars, you put gas in a car and it runs well, but if you put regular gas in a car that takes premium gas, it's going to dump you out on the highway and you're going to be stranded. And so sometimes kids are like that. Some kids are your Mercedes Benz living in a Ford pickup truck world and they really want to be that Ford pickup truck, but they were born a Mercedes and they need that special whatever it is, whether they don't do well with a particular food or they need some kind of, probiotic or whatever it is. So I don't delve
Yeah.
in deeply into that, but I do look to see if it's a problem. And if it's a problem, I'm going to let you know. The part where I tend to shine with that is more, okay, but how do we address this in a way that doesn't cause any kind of trauma to the kid? Because taking away kids' favorite foods can be really traumatic. So,
Mm.
like when my kids went through this, because they did go through this, we are definitely like Mercedes Benz in a Ford pickup truck world. We're our bodies are just very sensitive. And so I gave them each a box of safe snacks that they could have. And I said, you can have these whenever you want. I don't care if you eat them right before dinner. I don't care if you eat them as dinner. But they were all relatively safe, healthy snacks that they could like eat and were safe for them. And so it gave them a sense of control. And so, we're taking a lot of these kinds of like psychological and behavioral type things of, okay, yes, but how can we accomplish what we need to provide the right supports? Because it it's it's very difficult to just tell a parent, hey, your kid has a problem. You need to take them to an immunologist. They might have lots of allergies. That's one option. And then the parents are kind of like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Like, I don't even know
Mm-hmm.
how to handle this. And so we do deal with a lot of like behavioral things of, okay, how do we support that well? How do we talk about that in a way that helps us move forward positively? Another thing that we talk about a lot in consults is a lot of times dyslexia is a big one I see a lot. But what most people don't realize about dyslexia is that it is caused by many different processing weaknesses. But we
Mm-hmm.
usually go straight to the Orton Gillingham program and try to address all of the phonological stuff. But here's the thing. Did we check to make sure they can see first? Most of the time people do,
Mm.
but sometimes they don't. Next, if you are able to see, can you process that information visually into your brain? And if you're not, your letters might be wiggling, your eyes might be getting tired, those kinds of things. And
Mm-hmm.
then if we can do that, can we remember with our working memory what we put in our brain, which
Mm.
very often that's the problem.
Yes.
And there's not a lot out there for it. So one of the boost packets coming out is a curriculum designed to work on that specifically. That was the problem I had with learning to read was I couldn't remember it because we remember things by making a picture and I didn't see letters in my mind. So even today I can spell a word in my mind, but it's like white chalk on a light gray chalkboard and someone's coming along erasing it as we go. So it
I
still
love
isn't.
your analogies. Like they have
Thank
just been
you.
so great.
Analogies are my favorites. It makes things more accessible to parents. And
Indeed.
that's my whole point. If my book covers a lot of different um it covers a lot of different philosophies and things that are really kind of advanced ideas, like including like Descartes' mind body problem, which let me tell you, I thought that was boring to begin with when I was in school. But if you can put an analogy with it so that you can like make sense of it so that it actually like gives you that kind of like, all right, boots on the ground, what does this mean? That kind of thing, that helps. So I do a lot of that with my consults. We talk a lot about how kids are like onions or roses. I mean, if you got teenage boys, maybe onions is more appropriate. I mean, I have one, so sometimes we get stinky when we're in puberty. That's okay. Um, but they have layers. So yeah, you can't see the inner blossoms of a rose until it starts to bloom. And you can't see the inner layers of an onion until you start to peel it. And so as we're working with kids, we're going, okay, what's on the outside? What are the primary layers on the outside that need support? Because when we support those, then we can get to the inside. And so I do a lot of consults. And then the other option under Connect is I started creating a membership option because I realized that, doing a deep dive like that takes a lot of time. And it's not always time and expense that parents feel comfortable doing, especially if they have six neurodiverse kids or six kids with some kind of things going on, which I mean, it runs in families. So if you have a big family, the odds of you having, you know, six kids that all could use a consult, that's a lot. And so by creating the membership option, it gives each family free testing each year for the entire family. And it also gives them access to a virtual co-op. So some of the events I do, like I do family show and tell, where we often will do show and tell, but we'll also do some Cosmic Kids yoga. I also play with the kids in my private Minecraft server. So I'm playing with them. So I make sure that, we're learning and socially interacting in a way that makes everybody feel happy to be there.
Yeah.
And I've got parents creating events. So we've got a kids book discussion group. In the fall, we're going to have a former art therapist teaching a class. And some of the kids, they start their own club. So I've got a Rubik's Cube club starting today. that one of the
Wow.
kids has started it. Yeah, so it's so much fun. And then in addition to that, we also have ongoing parent support. So we have a parents book discussion group, weekly office hours, like all of those things are there to provide support for families so that they can get that ongoing support of, okay, well, we tried this, it didn't work. This is what happened. Now what? Or, you know, those kinds of things.
Gotcha,
So
gotcha. What state are
yeah.
you in?
I'm in Florida, but I work
Okay.
worldwide, and technically my business is housed in Texas because I have a partner and she handles all of those executive functioning details that you need to run a business that I don't have.
Gotcha, gotcha. So, okay, so y'all are virtual. Y'all
I do
are
everything virtual. Yeah.
okay.
Um, and and my reasoning for doing that, well, one, you can't work with the rest of the world if you live in Florida. It just doesn't work. I'm not flying. Um, but the other thing is that I've spent a good portion of my adult life at times being homebound. And a
Mm,
lot of families who have these needs go through that. And I was homebound this last year for several months. And one of the things I appreciated was that I was still able to work and to socialize with people from my bed. And that's an amazing gift that we've gotten over the last few years is to be able to do that. Another plus though about being virtual is that it is very difficult for kids that are outside the box to find other kids that are like them. I mean,
mm,
not that it's impossible, but the odds of you finding somebody who has the same exact special interest as you, like my daughter's really into Bendy and the Ink Machine, I'm finding other teenagers who are really into Bendy and the Ink Machine, like to her level locally, haven't found it yet. But she's got three really amazing friends that are in different countries, and they all love Bendy and the Ink Machine, and they are like fantastic. They are very supportive of each other, and I love that. And so being able to open our world up, and also we think we can teach social skills. We can't because there's so many social skills. Which species, which country, which region, which social class, which religion, which region of your country. Like there's so many different things that change what our social skills look like and what's acceptable. And a lot of times I find, especially with autistic kids, but also with other kids, sometimes the culture that they have been raised in is not the one they want to stay in because
mm.
they're looking for what makes me comfortable. What setting am I comfortable growing up in? Classic story. Tony Atwood is a psychologist from Australia. He was talking with some autistic teens in Italy. And he's like, so what's it like being autistic in Italy? And they're like, oh, it's awful. Everyone's always kissing and hugging you. We want to live in Japan. We want to just bow. So if you can find the social settings that you love and that are comfortable for you, you can really thrive. But if you're
Mm,
constantly trying to plant an African violet in a really like swampy area, it's not going to go very well. It's like trying to put a
yeah.
cactus there. It's going to get like super soaked and it's not going to work. So, same way with kids. So, one of the nice things about being online is that they have that opportunity to explore lots of different ways of being and to find those ways of being and those friends that help them find their spot to make them feel like they are someone else's cup of tea.
Nice.
Because we're
Oh,
not
of
everyone's cup of tea, and you can't be
course
everyone's
not.
cup of tea.
And that's fine. And that's what people
Yeah,
got to realize. That's okay. It's okay not to
exactly.
be for everyone. That is totally
Right.
okay.
Yeah. And
Yes,
that's
but
why we do
finding,
it virtual.
yes, I was gonna say finding your people are is always so fulfilling in whatever that looks like for you. And
So
you shouldn't be limited, and virtual reality, our virtual definitely allows us to be able to venture outside of mm, the the I guess the community
yeah.
and be able to touch other cultures and just learn a lot of different passions that are out there, and there are your people. You do have people everywhere. You do
Everyone's
have
got them.
people everywhere. Yes,
You've
yes,
just got to find them. And sometimes it takes getting online to find them. So,
yes, yes. And that's
especially if,
okay.
you're really into some kind of, I'm really like my daughter being really into the Bendy and the Ink Machine books. Like it's not even the video games, it's the books that she loves,
I haven't even heard of that. Bindi and
See?
yeah, so that's why I'm like, I'm glad she's found her people. I'm glad
Yeah.
she
So,
found
you just, yeah, you got to find your people, whatever those are. And I just find that doing things virtually, we get a lot of different variety. I would have never started a Rubik's Cube club, and now we've got a Rubik's Cube club. So we're
right.
starting the origami club next week.
Oh, those are fun. Like those are both
Yeah.
fun things.
Something
So
different for,
cool. So you connect with other parents
yeah.
and kids that have special needs, so to
Yes.
speak.
Now, my definition of special needs is different from most
Okay.
because we all need support at some point in our lives. Like, and some of those supports are not naturally accommodated for in the environment. And a special need is a need that falls outside the average. So, whether that need is some kind of neurodiversity, some kind of disability, some kind of health problem, or some kind of trauma, all of those things need special accommodations that we don't always
Mhm.
automatically provide in society. And so I like to tell people that, everybody has a special need because nobody gets out of this world without trauma. And if you do, come back and tell us how you did it because we all want to know.
Right? Please tell.
Yes.
Please share with us.
Yes.
No,
So,
but I love how you put that in general anyways, because even with speaking, like you said, your family's a Mercedes Benz, you put it on a different level of, than the average Ford Broncos riding around here or Ford F-150.
I
We're
so wish
little
sometimes.
more high end, and
That's
we take a
right.
little more maintenance, a little more special maintenance. And I love that you put it that way, because I've had the conversations with other individuals that work in the special need neurodivergent world. And I spoke, like we were just speaking on, words and how words sound and everything. And if they were not labeled as disabilities, would people look at them in the way that they look at them? Because it's
Yes.
is it really a disability? Like, that's my question. Is it really a
Exactly.
disability, or is it just us being the individuals that we are? And because you don't fit into the standard, model, it's like, now, oh, you're defective. But are you really? I don't think so, because we
I
are
agree.
who we are, right? So
Yes.
I like to have these conversations, because a lot of things I don't think of on the average level, by no means. And so the conversation, like I was telling a friend, like I just learned neurodivergent probably towards the end of last year. I had never
Yeah.
heard that word before.
It's
And I was like,
new.
oh, right. It is.
It's new.
So it's like I just be trying to keep up. But
It's
I
hard.
guess, right, it is. It is. I feel that the labels of disability is like a hindrance. And I like
Yes.
when people are able to title them other things, because I don't see them as disabilities.
Well, and
Hurt me.
that's the
Mhm.
reason we chose the title that we did for the book, because
Special needs.
special needs is definitely like one of those words that is beginning to fall out of favor right now. But the reason it's falling out of favor isn't the people with the needs. It's the
Mm.
people who aren't willing to acknowledge that they also have needs. If we
Mm.
all acknowledge that we have special needs, it wouldn't be a stigma. But people don't
Right.
want to identify with people who have a disability or a neurodiversity. They're like, oh, no, I'm not like that. No, we're all like that because we all have needs at some point that set us aside where we need extra accommodation. If we could get that through our heads, if we could all acknowledge that we have special needs, it would make such a huge difference in how people get along in our world. And so that's the one requirement for being in my membership. All you have to do is acknowledge that you have a special need. You don't have to have a diagnosis of anything. You don't have to have anything where you can go, oh, well, am I special enough? No, you just have to be willing. You just have to be willing to say that, yes, I have a special need too. That's it.
Right. But like you said, I really feel like we all do have some kind of special needs. Like we really do, whether it's that I don't like the crust on my toast, like
Yeah,
it's still a special need. Like it's still
exactly.
like, hey, I'm not gonna eat this bread if this if the
That's
edges
right.
is so,
Because bread doesn't come without the crust, generally speaking.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's all
So
kinds
that
of
is
things
a
like that.
special need. Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is. And I'm loving that you're putting it this way. Um, because it does need to be like kind of destigmatized as
Yes.
opposed, like what people consider as special needs. And I just feel
Right.
like we're not all meant to be a standard, like,
No,
what
that's
societal like average person. I don't feel
that's
like
something
we
I
are
mentioned in
those
my book.
people.
That's something I
Yes.
mentioned in my book because it says that I see each person as a gift. And just like I
Yes.
wouldn't want all of my presents to be the exact same,
Mm.
yeah,
You in the
I
monology show. You killing
have analogies like that. That's my jam.
I'm loving them. Okay. I'm loving them.
Yeah, but we don't want our
Yes.
gifts to all be the same. So we need to be willing to give people the freedom to be themselves, whether that's giving myself the freedom to be myself, which sometimes let's be honest, that's hard, or
Yeah.
giving other people the freedom to be themselves and to recognize that they are a gift, even if it's, sometimes you get those gifts from relatives and you're kind of like, I'm not so sure about this.
I know. Why did you give me that?
Yeah, but then later you kind of go, hey, this actually turned out pretty cool, you know? And so some people are like that. You look at it,
Indeed.
I'm not seeing how this is a great gift yet. And then, you give it a little bit of time and you go, oh, I see it now. But if you don't give it time and you don't look for it, you're not going to see it.
Yes, yes, yes. And I mean, it still goes back to the not being for everyone because even if that gift isn't for you, it's for someone. So
Exactly.
pass it
And
on
if it's for
and don't.
someone else, then maybe it will also kind of come back to you in a way. I find that's the case a lot of
Yes,
times.
yes,
Mhm.
yes. And if it's not for you, don't do anything to damage it for the next
Exactly.
person.
That's right. Exactly. And I think
Yeah,
that's, if you put it that way, that's a lot of what we're dealing with kids who fall outside the average is that a lot of times they're getting damaged. And it's
yes,
not because
yes.
of them, it's because of us as adults. Because,
Mm,
they come into this world, I mean, sometimes we come into this world with a few like support needs because, maybe we've got a health issue or something. But generally speaking, we come into this world brand spanking new without any trauma, unless we had medical trauma on the way in, you know? And so any trauma that we have developed, we've developed it while here. And
mm,
who's in charge of keeping kids safe when they're small? That's us as parents and adults in our society because they're still children. And so when a child experiences trauma, sometimes it's an accident that happens. Sometimes things happen that we can't control. We lose someone who's close to us or something. But how we handle that, how secure they feel in those difficult situations, that is up to us. That's something we
yeah.
can control. Now, do we always do it perfectly? No, absolutely not. I mean, I kind of feel like your kids should be in therapy by the time they're an adult. If not, you probably haven't done your job right. I mean, there should be something for them to discuss.
Like
My
y'all rather
mom is
boring,
crazy.
huh?
you know, you won't
Right.
believe what I had to deal with growing up with her. um, but I think that it's really important that we think about, how are we parenting? One of the things I talk about in the book is, reactionary parenting. That's why a lot of autistic adults say they really wish if their parents did anything that they went to therapy. Because
Mm,
when we don't have someone that we can bounce things off of who can help us catch when we're reacting to our own past experiences, then we end up being reactionary parents. And that
mm,
doesn't actually help our kids. So being mindful about, okay, where are my blocks? Where are my traumas? What are the things that are going to get in my way? Where am I inclined to be out of balance? And then being mindful about, okay, but what are the principles that are most important to me as far as being a parent and how we live our lives? And are there rules that need to be in place to support that? And if so, what are they? Because a
Mm,
lot of times rules can seem really arbitrary to kids. And not to mention, I mean, if we're on the subject of rules, they say that you should only have 3 to 5 rules because past 3 to 5, the kids can't remember them and you can't enforce them consistently. It's just too many
mm,
things to keep up with. So I stick with 3
indeed.
because, like I said, I have almost 0 executive functioning skills. So 5 wasn't even happening. So, but if you're only going to have 3 rules, you got to think really hard about what's
On what
important
those
to you.
three? Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
What's your
exactly.
three? Because I don't even think I have three. So tell me three. tell
Okay.
me, tell
So
me your
I have
rules.
I have 3 from when my kids were little and then 3 from when they got older. So when they were little, one of the rules was we keep our bottoms in our chair because if you got your bottom in your chair, you can't put your head in your chair. You can't put do a headstand or a handstand in there. You can't cartwheel off of it because your bottom's in the chair.
Mm,
See, that just eliminated a whole bunch of other rules because I told
I
them what
see.
to do
Yeah.
instead of what not to
Well,
do.
not to do. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Another one was we stay out of the fireplace because
Mm.
Florida, so they just love to crawl in the fireplace. I'm like, I'm sorry, this sets a very bad precedent. This is not a safe place to go have a hidey house.
This is a bit dangerous in a fireplace. This is a bit
Right. And
dangerous.
then the last one was we go outside with an adult.
Mm.
So, but as they got older, those weren't things we needed as much. And so as they got old, and those were very good, like concrete rules where, you could kind of look at it and go, okay, that's not right. This is right. As they got older, they became more abstract, and that led to more conversations and less consequences. So
Mm.
as we have more conversations, then we're able to learn the nuance of those things. So they are currently, we are kind, we are
Mm.
truthful, and we do our work. Now, what your work
Right.
is can change a lot. What is truth? Truth can be difficult because, it has some gray lines in there too. But truth is one of those that's very important in our house because I need people to be truthful with me because I'm not very good at figuring out when people are kidding or, you know, um, it's very difficult for me. And I have a hard time trusting people when they aren't truthful with me. I'm still mad about the ninth grade biology textbook that had a picture of the protein pump in the cell wall because there's no protein pump. It's a property of the cell wall. They just thought we were too stupid to understand that.
Mm.
And I'm still mad about it.
Mm.
So my kids know this. They
So
know
you
this
hold
about
on.
me. I'm
Yeah.
like,
You hold.
guys,
Yeah.
this is how you get along in this house. If you don't, we're going to have problems. So, and
Nice.
be kind. That's something that we have a lot of conversations about because, you're not always kind to everyone, and they'll call me on the carpet on these rules too. They'll be like, Mom, that wasn't kind.
Mm.
You delay. And when we have these conversations, a lot of times we have them one on one. Like we'll try to wait and have that conversation in a situation where they won't be embarrassed by somebody else.
Yes. Yes. That is
So, and
very, very
it's about
important.
respect, respect and being mindful about, where we are, how we're showing up in the world, and how our own past trauma, all that stuff might be impacting how we're choosing to parent.
Yes. 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 I
Hmm.
love that because I'm thinking about like my rules. I feel
Yeah.
like first and foremost, clean up after yourself. Like
Mm,
that's our a topic of our thing. Like, I know we were visiting family a couple weeks ago, and their aunt on their dad's side was just like, do they don't get in trouble, huh? And I'm like I don't think so. Like, so the
yeah,
only thing that we fuss about or I fuss about is the cleaning up after themselves. Like, and that's any
exactly.
setting, that's everywhere. Like, just clean up
Exactly.
after yourselves. I'm not asking you to clean up after me, I'm asking you to clean up after you because you are
Right.
big enough to do that.
Well, and
Um,
I kind of lump that in with doing your work because that is one of the things of work that I
that
kind
is
of,
work. It is.
yeah, I see that as kind of their responsibility. I didn't ask them to do my work, I asked them to do their work. And
Their
what
work.
their work is, see, you got to be thoughtful about how you word these things, because
Yes.
then you can get a lot more bang for your buck that way.
Exactly. Exactly. And
So,
I'm
and
really
that's
big on energy. So I tell them, put out the energy you want to receive. Like, don't go
mhm.
around here, being mean to people, because that's the energy you're going to get back. So I
Yeah.
think that encompasses the be kind and
Oh, it
mindful
does.
and,
It does.
respectful, because it's like whatever
Mhm.
you're putting out should be what you want to receive back.
Yeah.
And if it's
Yeah.
not, then you can check yourself.
Well,
Check.
and sometimes I've even used the be kind one of, hey, that's my couch that I paid for, and you're not being very kind to my couch right now because you are damaging it. And that's
Exactly.
not being very kind to me either because I put hard money into that. So, it's walking these things out in relationship with kids. That's what the
Yeah.
rules are for, to pick out what's going to help you get along, especially in this house, but also maybe outside of it. And how can we have conversations about just how far those things extend because they extend a lot.
Yes, and it goes back to your original, like one of the first things you shared about Charlotte Mason, which
Yeah,
is the kids are people.
they are. And that really is so
Like,
fundamental. I know it's
right?
ridiculous. You'd think that that wouldn't be so hard, but
No, it is. It
yeah.
is. It is for a lot of people, and you see them like talking to them sometimes as if they're adult people that have everything figured out and not three.
Hmm.
And still trying to understand. But
Yeah. You got to honor where people are.
right, right,
Yeah.
right, right, right.
Yeah.
So yeah. No, I love
Mhm.
everything that you're doing. I
Thank
do.
you.
I
I'm
love
really
I
kind
love
of
you.
hoping we can reframe how we think about these things because
Of
the current
course.
framework we have is really diagnosis driven and disability driven. Not that a disability is a bad thing, but I don't want people always focusing on what I'm lacking. I'd
Mm,
like people to focus on the fact that everybody has something beautiful to contribute and
yeah.
that we should respect and honor each person because each person is a gift. Um,
Yes.
that was one of the things that we actually had trouble with. Um, Charlotte Mason was writing right after World War One. And one of the fascinating things she points out is she says that Germany had gotten into the state that they had because of their education system at the time. She said they had taken a lot of the English educational philosophies and kind of stripped the morality out of it. They basically broke it down to a utilitarian education, which is focused on just how smart you are and how physically adept you are. And it basically broke a child down to you're a brain or a body, not a person. And so, in World War One, they showed a lot of disregard for the individuality of different countries. So there wasn't a respect for individual countries being able to do and be the kind of countries that they chose to be. They're like, nope, we don't like the way you're doing it. We're going to come in and take it over. And she said, hopefully, we'll never see anything like this again. Of course, we know today that we did, and that the second time around, World War II, led to the dehumanization of many people. And this was actually a very traumatic event for me to learn about in school because when I walked into the Holocaust Museum we went to, I saw pictures of kids with disabilities. And I hadn't been prepared for the fact that there were people out there that would want to kill me. That thought had never occurred to me. And no one had prepped me for that either, because I don't think it occurred to them either that I would take it that way. And so, but why? Why did they terminate people with disabilities? Because they didn't have value to the state, because they saw the value of a person being in their mind or their body. But there is something else about us that gives us value, something so deep and intrinsic about us that we have trouble describing it. Some people call it a soul, some people call it a spirit, some people call it a higher self. I don't care what they call it, but it's that
Right.
that essence of who we are that gives us value. We aren't valuable because of how smart we are. We aren't valuable because of how athletic we are. We're valuable because we're people.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
I
yes.
think it's a beautiful thought that a lot of times we don't think about, because so often we think about the value of, how smart a kid is, or, oh, well, they're so athletic, or they're so brilliant at this subject. Um,
Hmm.
but it's more than that. And Fred Rogers, I quoted him in the book too. I mean, who doesn't love Mr. Rogers? I mean, the, I'd really question anybody who didn't like Mr. Rogers. He had a quote. I'll read it real quick. It's good. Part of the problem with the word disabilities is that it immediately suggests an inability to see or hear or walk or do things that many of us take for granted. But what of people who can't feel or talk about their feelings or manage their feelings in constructive ways? What of people who aren't able to form close and strong relationships, and people who cannot find fulfillment in their lives, or those who have lost hope, who live in disappointment and bitterness and find in life no joy, no love? These, it seems to me, are the real disabilities.
Mm, mm,
Mhm. I know. So,
yeah. I will
yeah,
call those disabilities, definitely.
absolutely. We all have them. We all have things that we need support and help with growing and learning.
Yeah,
And when we can acknowledge that, I think it stands to change the world.
indeed. Indeed it
It
does.
Powerful ideas change the world, and I think that one is a very powerful idea. Fred Rogers definitely contributed to that voice. There's been a lot of other people over the centuries who've also contributed to that voice, and I'm just hoping to further amplify all of those ideas, because sometimes they get lost when we get so hung up on our scientific advances and how smart we are. Sometimes we forget about the people. Um, you know, we can get so hung up on our industrialization, our scientific advances, how smart we are, figuring all the things out. But on the other hand, there's people and relationships and feelings, and those are things we can't quantify. So when we spend all of our time on things that we can add up and calculate and define, these other things over here that we can't define, like love and value and those kinds of things. Sometimes those get left behind because we want to then be able to quantify everything. And so
Mm,
I think we are at a point where we have spent so much time trying to quantify and measure everything, including how successful a child is in school, that we really need to start swinging in the other direction so that we can go back and reconnect with how important those unquantifiable traits are.
love that. I love that. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. That was very sweet and something for people to think about.
Oh, yeah. And
Definitely give some
honestly,
deep
everybody
thought.
can think about it.
Please, please,
Yes.
please, please do.
Mhm. Yeah.
Thank you, Amy, for all the work that you're doing
Thank you.
with whatever it is that you're lacking, because I feel like you have it all. Um,
Oh, my husband
I,
will tell you a very different story.
tell him, we don't need to know that part. But no, what you have is amazing. And thank you for being a voice for those who may not know how to speak up for themselves yet, or the parents who don't know how to quite walk in those advocating, but like
Yeah.
footsteps, take those advocating footsteps just yet. I'm glad that they have your support for them to be able to reach out
It is my
and
goal.
find to
That is
work it
what I
out.
want more than anything.
Yes, yes,
I want to see that start to shift. I think it's so
yes.
important. So,
It will. It is. It is. Not even it
yeah.
will. It is. It is.
Well, and if I could ask your audience one thing, I would ask at this point if people would buy my book off Amazon, because we're doing really well in the rankings right now, but I want to keep that momentum going, because I think this is a conversation we need to keep like present in
Yeah.
discussion. And that is one great way of doing it, because there's a lot of ideas to chew on.
Nice. Yes, yes. Please, please support. And also, before I let you go, if you can give parents 3 things that they can, put into practice when working with their special needs kids, what would that be?
Okay. Number one, get to therapy. Seriously, like when we have someone who knows us and who knows where our um, little triggers are and things like that, then they can help us parent from a better place. So
Mm,
it really helps us be better parents when we process our own stuff before trying to parent our own kids.
yes.
So that's a big one. Number two, if you have if you're having some significant issues where you don't know like where the issue is, you don't know where to start, go to my website, sign up for a consult or the membership, either one. They both basically lead to the same thing. It just looks a little different. Um, I would be happy to help you try and sort that out because I mean, you can read all the books you want to, but it's difficult to see that pattern and to figure out which processing areas are causing the trouble. That's why so many times I get families from all over the country, and I'm like, "They told you to do what?"
Mm.
And it's just not the right fit. But if we can find the right fit for your kid, it's like using a scalpel instead of an axe to do surgery. I mean, well, yeah, we could take your whole leg off with an axe, but why don't we just take the mole off that's causing the problem? You know? And so many curriculums out there, they try to do it all, but they're not focusing on what the kid really needs. And it creates a lot of frustration because they're working extra hard. And all they really needed was this one thing. And I've seen parents, families, when they do this, if they get just the right thing and they use the scalpel approach, I have seen kids make 5, 7, 10 grade level improvement in 1 year. It's a matter of finding the right thing. So those 2 things. And then I think my last one, which is probably honestly the most important one, treat your child as if they're your best friend. It doesn't mean
Wow.
they have to be your best friend, but treat them with the same respect you would your best friend. If you find yourself treating your child in a way where you go, "Oh, my best friend would not like it if I treated them that way," might need to also not treat our kids that way.
Nice. I love that. I love that. Thank you for that, Amy. Thank you
You're
so very
welcome.
much. Parents, you heard, you have the support. Reach out. Don't think that you have to do it alone. And remember, we're all here purpose with
That's right.
greatness. And since Amy's been using analogies this whole time, let me throw out one of my faves. We are all a piece to the puzzle. And no matter how small the piece is, it is important because the puzzle is not complete without it. So understand that you are important to it all. You matter. We need you. Your voice matters. Your actions matter. All of that great stuff. So just, revel in your dopeness and understand that, you are great. So in the meantime, in between time, homeschool your kids.